welcome back to Chris Frank Games, a
Alrighty then.
the Jim Carrey
Yeah, you were
out of
channeling him. He was trying to come through in your voice,
Hey
but you
man,
weren't letting him.
he was the mask. He was the mask.
I
Um,
still one of my dreams. I still want a gritty reboot of The Mask that's closer based on the much more violent comic
the
books.
real comic book.
Yeah, where he's like a Tex Avery themed like serial killer monster guy rather than a mildly mischievous cartoon man.
Yeah, basically, right? Those old school '90s Dark Horse comic books. Those are uh,
That's gritty.
those are
That's
good
yeah,
stuff.
that's 90s grimdark, even with a cartoon character based superhero.
Talk about the golden age. That's the grime. That's the grime age right there. So, all right, and then so this is the video game podcast. Chris Frank Games. My name is Chris. That's the Chris, and we got Frank White, the Frank. Frank, how are you? How are
I'm
you doing?
doing okay. Got old comic books on the mind, clearly.
Yeah. Yep. Sure. You still have the old comic books from high school lying around? Are they worth anything?
No, because they're like none of them are in bags. Like there's like a I've got a cupboard somewhere that's just got a bunch of comic books in there. They're probably all moldy or something. I just never noticed.
Yeah, I remember back in the day going through the old comic book stores, issues of Green Lantern from the early '80s or something like that, from like '82 or whatever, and I always think to myself, man, who bought this back in the day? Who bought this? All right, well, we're gonna be talking about video games and things that we've bought and other things we have not bought. We have a lot of news, not really, but we will talk about something nevertheless. I guess just to tease a little bit, I finally played Zelda and Mario in VR,
Mm.
in Labo VR, and the update finally came out as we record this, basically 1 hour ago. We almost had to delay the show, Frank, to get my hot takes
Yeah, we usually
into
have
this.
our finger on the pulse of video game technology and culture
Listen, man,
right here.
we can't be a week late on this stuff. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. All right, so I'll be talking about that at the end of the show. So make sure you listen to the end of the show, and we're gonna talk about some video game news. But first, well, actually first, the big release of this week was Gone. No, Days Gone,
Oh yeah.
not Gone Home. Days Gone.
Days gone. It has it days went. It's days come and gone.
Days bye bye. Yeah. So this game got revealed what 3 years? No, this got revealed during the PS4 Pro, right? It was like the showcase.
Yeah.
Long
And
ass
and
time ago.
even then, like the attitude I feel towards this game has not changed much through the hype period and now release, where everyone's just like, yeah, okay, zombie game. Yeah, it's so weird for a Sony first party game. Like, clearly, this game exists because some suit somewhere was like, hey, Last of Us is doing well. We can't just make a ton of Last of Us games, so let's just make a game that's basically the same thing.
Yeah, and it's basically Last of Us, like, and meets Far Cry. Which, by the way, as playing Last of Us, I was like, man, this would be so much better if it was like an open world type game because Last of Us is super linear
Yeah.
and you can't
So,
really go very
hey,
far. All this stuff.
you got what you asked for. The monkey's paw curled a finger.
Yeah, it basically seems like it's just the takes every good thing about a modern day open world third person shooter and a bunch of other stuff and just kind of combines it. And I mean, I didn't think this was gonna get like stellar reviews, like tens or nines, but I'm kind of shocked actually by the lowness or what do you call it, the harshness of these reviews. I mean, 6.8. I think IGN gave it like a 6.8. See
Yeah.
sixes and sevens.
How dare these these mainstream publications give a AAA Sony first-party game only a 6.8.
Yeah, shocking.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
yeah, I guess with great inflation, that is pretty bad, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen I watched some of the gameplay on the IGN review, and the game, yeah, looks like Last of Us, in a big ass open world, and it looks like it's controls pretty well. I mean, the action looks pretty good, the fighting looks pretty good, and this girl's or whatever I should say this girl, but this reviewer is talking about like how the story is like not that great. It's like, well, yeah, we really need to be that critical just because the story is not great. And yeah, maybe some of those missions are like bloated, and that's the other complaint. But it's like I'm sure you don't have to do all that stuff. And I don't know. I think for a lot of people, the average gamer that doesn't actually read reviews and are just looking for a fun game to shoot zombies with, I think they kind of want a game that's going to last 60 hours because they're spending a lot of money on a game.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's just this game basically already exists. Like maybe not in this exact ratio of all right, zombie hordes, open world, but like I don't know. It's got it has a very like focus tested within an inch of its life kind of feel in that, and there's all this stuff like we just had like this game has the big swarms of zombies, but we literally just had the World War Z game, and the like literally the main selling point of that game is the big like flooding hordes of zombies. Uh,
yeah,
so
maybe
it's
that's
like
not that.
even the main selling point has like already been done in a much more like focused package just the other week. And then on top of that, actually, can't remember what review I was reading, what publication, but one of the big complaints. Actually, it might have been Waypoint, Vice. Uh, One of the big complaints was that there's not actually all that much zombie horde fighting. They really play it up in the promos, but that you maybe will like two or three times in the entire game where you're actually gonna like go toe to toe with a zombie horde, and then sometimes you have to like stealth away from them because you'll come across one and you're in no shape to actually fight it. But even that doesn't seem like it's super duper common. So yeah, so even like the big selling point of having just all these zombies on screen doesn't it doesn't really look like they were taking advantage of it
Well, I
basically.
heard it actually was the best part of the game too. So if it doesn't happen that much, that's kind of sad
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little
that
bit.
was basically the reviews like this is cool, but it doesn't happen enough over the course of this very long 40 plus hour open world game.
Yeah, and yeah, it's got bugs and all that stuff. But I
Well,
mean,
oh yeah, it looks there's some stuff that looks janky as heck. I think it was actually IGN preview gameplay footage. Or no, it wasn't IGN. It was Game Informer, and every commenter on YouTube was calling them IGN because they were not happy with how the guy was playing. Even though you got to give these guys a break when they are playing the game and at the same time, like trying to give you detailed impressions of the gameplay systems and stuff. Like I don't know. I think the mistake there is doing the live demos and recording it with the guy talking because it's not easy to play a game that you might not be super duper familiar with while trying to talk smart about it. I have a hard time talking smart about things when I'm just standing perfectly still.
when you're doing the
Uh,
podcast,
but yeah, all of the YouTube comments were just like, "This is game journalist, gameplay, control the camera, blah 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 blah." But my big takeaway was that he had two rifles on his back. It looks like you've got the kind of standard like two long guns, one sidearm, one melee weapon kind of setup. Um, and so yeah, the guy had two long guns on his back, and they were just the whole time. The stocks are just like clipping into each other, so like they're just you got half of one stock just poking out of the other, and not like an incidental way. It's like that's just like right on the guy's back, like big on the screen at all times because it's a third person shooter, just ugly clipping each other through, and that's just the way it is. And yeah, it was I saw that and I just couldn't get over it.
That's
I
like
was like,
minus
what?
one. That's minus 1 point on Frank's
Yeah,
scale right there. You already lost the point right there, folks.
yeah. It's like
Bend.
it's yeah. Well, it hurts immersion and like what watching preview gameplay footage, like you really get the impression of like, oh, okay, this kind of looks like something that a developer bit off more than they could chew as far as the amount of content there was in there. Because
Yep.
it's like I don't know, maybe you work on getting the guns that don't clip through each other. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, we didn't expect him to have two rifles. Well, clearly the guy did right there in the in the Game Informer preview booth or wherever they're at. So yeah, so that just kind of gave me a bad impression of the amount of polish in this game. And then somebody on Twitter just showed a clip of a cutscene that was really, really bad. like uh just one of those things where the people who are doing the voice directing, like directing the voice actors, and the people who are like you can tell it was not a mocap thing where the actors are actually wearing the suits because there was this massive disconnect. He was rescuing a girl, and she was all mad at him because he's like not saving her from the work camp or something. Um, and yeah, their like awkward video game body language had no matching whatsoever to the intensity of the voice acting. To the point where I thought that like the person had messed with it, had like screwed with the dub or something, because the dubbing was also very bad. And they're like, no, that's just so yeah. I also get the impression that that's kind of this is one of those games where like the big story cutscenes are just a whole different world from side mission cutscenes. Like, okay, you can tell you can tell which cutscene the budget went into. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, these guys were they're primarily making PSP games, so this is probably one of their big first high res kind of game. So these guys actually were the ones that did Bubsy 3D actually way back in the day. So maybe
it
they're
shows.
yeah.
No, I think everyone's actually being super harsh on the game just for like
Yeah, I don't know. It's
I'll
weird.
probably get it when it's super cheap. I might
Yeah.
not actually like play it all the way through, but yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything
It
you know wildly wrong with it. It just looks like it's too big for its britches.
Well, it reminds me of Mad Max, the open world game that came out many years ago. That I thought, people were just saying it sucks, but then when I watched people play it, I was like, wow, this actually looks pretty fun. I don't know what people are talking about, and it played pretty fun when I played it, you know.
I don't know.
So
I think that's probably a good analogy because when I played Mad Max, I was like, yeah, I don't have a lot of specific complaints about this game. Like it does this bad, it does that. But it's like no, it's got Batman combat and the car combat's kind of neat, but it's just not great. It's not winning me over, and because that's a game that the rare game that I got kind of pretty into and got a ways into and then kind of lost interest in. Usually I get obsessed and have to see them all the way through. But yeah, I don't know. I get the same kind of feeling from this. Right down to like having the like one specific vehicle that you have to kind of
yeah,
babysit.
exactly. Yeah, they remind me of the too, and you like upgrade it and stuff. I don't know. I mean, there was like the Digital Foundry that John Lennon video did. He kind of like talks about like the graphics and all that stuff, how nice they are and everything. And he was talking like how the scene, like he had to like loot a village or whatever, and then he comes back, and then there's this AI guy like trying to strip his bicycle of like parts. So then he got into a battle with that guy. So and he was saying like it reminded him a lot of like Far Cry 2 because there's a lot of these survival type of things.
Well,
Um,
I'm sure it's got the systemic elements because in
yeah,
that same gameplay clip I was talking about earlier, there was actually kind of a cool moment, and I don't know how different this would be if I could hear the sound because the sound's turned way down because the guy is discussing the nuances of the gameplay. But he was fighting bandits, and there was like a bunch of guys, and he threw a grenade at them, and like they were kind of down in a ravine, and he took out a couple, and then had to turn his attention to a guy behind him, and killed that guy. And then when he went back around the corner, like the group of um, bandits that he had just, killed a couple of with the grenade has been totally replaced by a small horde of zombies that's eating them.
Oh yeah, that's
So
cool.
it was just kind of a fun moment of like, okay, there's bandits. Someone turn around and oh, they're all getting eaten. So, and yeah, I think kind of it should hopefully have that going for it with the fun like systemic things of like zombie bear, zombie wolves.
Yep.
I don't. We'll see if it gets annoying over the course of the 40 hours or so that you want you to play this.
Well, then there's also there's shit where you have to do like these stealth missions that you pass or fail, and that looks like garbage. So I mean, it has those stupid missions that you have to pass. Like those Ubisoft missions. I don't know what they maybe they should have cut a lot of some of that stuff out. And I guess like your bike gets hurt or injured, even if you're like going off jumps and all that stuff. So yeah, that's probably a wrong decision to do that. So. But I thought, I had no intention of like no interest in this game like whatsoever. But then I saw some gameplay today. I was like, well, this it does look like Last of Us, just kind of open world, and that's kind of cool. I think. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna wait for actual Last of Us.
Yeah. Well, I'd say it's not gonna be open world. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
It's people are like, why
but
can't it have a good story?
I'm kind of sick of the open world.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's not for it doesn't have to be every game, guys. Like there is something to be said for a more focused linear experience.
Did you get you didn't get Uncharted 4 yet though, right?
No, I've only ever played Uncharted 1.
Okay. Yeah, I think Uncharted 4 went a little too long, but that could be discussed another day. All right, so there you go. Days Gone. Again, it's like, okay, okay, all right. Obviously, this had a tenth of the budget of like Red Dead Redemption 2, but I guarantee you
Well,
this.
a tenth of the budget of Red Dead Redemption 2 is a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Probably less than that, but like, this game is probably more fun in a lot of ways than Red Dead Redemption 2. All right, so and everyone's giving that game a 10. All right, so can we just? I thought this was super super surprising. The scores. Okay, all right, we can move on. All right, and then this. I mean, I didn't even want to have a story about this because it's just so insignificant. But I had nothing for news. But Nintendo confirmed that there will be no quote unquote new Switch at E3 2019. So it may not be at E3, but is it going to be outside E3? Will be on the internet. So it just seems like they're not going to show it off, at least.
Maybe down in the sewers, but you have to talk to an evil clown to get your hands on it.
Yeah, so maybe it'll be on the on the Nintendo Direct, but you actually won't be able to play it. But I mean, I can see them announce this like in August though, or something like that. Keep the momentum going. So, but I don't know. There's a bunch of newspapers, the Nikkei Times or whatever, saying it's still the two different Switches are still coming out this fall. So, all right.
Okay, guys, weird flex, but go off.
All right, Frank, did you have any news for us for this week?
Well, we should probably talk about the big Fortnite article in Polygon.
The work conditions.
Yeah, though it's like, I guess I understand people getting sick of these topics because it's like it's the same story all over and over again. Mandatory crunch or not mandatory crunch with lots of big scare quotes around it. The difference here is that the crunch came later for these guys. There's the victim of their success kind of story. Most games have their crunch period, before release, and for what is it? Epic? Is that Epic?
Yeah, does Fortnite? Yeah.
Okay. Like they had, they went into crunch mode basically after their unexpected super duper success in the battle royale world because they pumped content out so fast, which has led to if anyone still wants to bash game journalism, a really funny dichotomy of Polygon articles about a week apart. I mean, obviously not the same author, but they had articles a week apart. This article, talking about like how overworked the Fortnite team is because they're pumping so much content out on a weekly basis, uh, versus there was another article basically lamenting Apex Legends like losing ground from its like huge launch because it's
They're not pumping
much.
out content,
Yeah, yeah.
basically.
Which is supposedly by design. They said that they wanted they didn't want to be disrupting the meta all the time. So but obviously like pumping out a lot of new crap like gets hands back on the controllers, gets the logins coming in.
Yeah.
So from a business standpoint, obviously Fortnite's probably doing better. But yeah, it's gotta stink for the developers to like have like no end in sight really. Like, well, when does crunch period end? And like, well, pretty much when the game loses momentum and you all get fired.
Yeah, when there's less
Uh,
than 50,000 players, that's
yeah,
not coming. So the end of the world. Yeah, there's definitely like a balance, and then yeah, I mean they respawn had a letter that said they could be doing that, but they value the well-being of their staff more than churning out content. So there's definitely two
yeah. Well,
views.
yeah, I totally believe you guys, and you're not just saying that to get good press.
Yeah, for sure.
Wink, wink, wink. Because I mean, there's other considerations too. Like, I don't play either of these games, so I can't speak personally. But I've heard, you know, that yeah, Apex is getting kind of stale these days, and also that Fortnite can occasionally suffer from like you don't play for a couple weeks and you come back and it's a totally different game and like what's this there's something about fried food now and like a different mode that everybody hates and I like every time I hear something new about Fortnite I feel like I understand the game less but
Yeah, they lost me when they were riding rockets. I think that was like 18 years ago, or
yeah
18 seasons ago, or something.
but yeah so I've heard complaints that like the meta as they say feels very unstable in Fortnite.
Well, the problem with these battle royale games is that you play the same map a billion jillion times, and then yeah, it's gonna get stale, and then yeah, the circle moves, but still, it's the same map. It's still faulty towers or
Yeah.
twisted towers or whatever the fuck, you
Yeah,
know.
well, I feel like how many maps does Apex Legends have?
It's just one.
Just the one? Well, there's your problem, guys. So that's the thing. You could wildly improve, just with a new map would freshen things up, 50% in one day. I mean, obviously, it's gonna take a lot longer than one day to make a whole new map, uh, but making new characters means a lot more stuff to monetize because if you make a map, then you have to like, are we going to split the player base up or just let everybody have it? And since nowadays it's all about recurring user spending, uh, it's not as profitable to make a new map versus a new character, most likely.
Yeah. And well, I mean, listen, it's a free game, right? So you can't blame them for wanting to make some money on it. You know what I mean? So there's definitely balances you have
Yeah.
to do, and all this stuff. And just that Fortnite article. What kind of surprised me is that they were even doing crunch. You know what I mean? Like I thought they were doing all these crazy updates because they got a bunch of staff because they're making billions of dollars every month. So again, I'm kind of shocked by how poorly these giant teams are managed. It's like, why are you guys still in crunch? Like maybe hire more people or something. I mean, I guess it's easy for me to say that, but
Yeah. Well, that's the last thing they want to do, like ever.
yeah, I guess it's working right
Gotta
now.
hire
So
more
why?
mouths to feed.
Yeah, and by the way, just throwing people at a problem does not solve it either, too. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, but on the other hand, as a business, you gotta be like, man, we have a gold mine here. We gotta mine this for all of it's worth because this could be like gone, like in 1 year, or it could be way less popular. So we need to strike this as
Yeah.
much as
Mhm.
possible. So, and
But
also,
still, not a great experience for the employee to be like basically like, yeah, it's crunch time until it's unemployment line time.
yeah, yeah. Also, I would like to see these anonymous people. I would like to see their compensation, right? Because these people are making overtime, right? And they do say they're getting paid for overtime, and you got to assume it's going to be paid time and a half, right? I'm sure all of these people are making over 70 G's a year, right? Probably maybe even 100 G's a year when it all comes down to it, which, doesn't mean
I don't know.
that's worth working
Maybe
100
I think it really
hours.
depends on your role.
Yeah,
Like,
well, I mean, again, that doesn't mean that you should be working 100 hours, but on the other hand, if you're young and you're trying to make a shit ton of money, you know, that's how you do it, right? You fucking bust your ass and work overtime, right? So I just think that it would seem, yeah, these guys are working a lot, but they're not. These guys are making more than 30 G's. Okay, they're making more than $10 an hour
oh, the
for sure.
QA testers, that's about what they make.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe. Well, they're also in North Carolina, right? So stuff's cheaper there. So there's that,
I
right?
don't know where they are.
But yeah,
Well, I wouldn't want to do it. But hey, but speaking of, we should learn their compensations, and we get totally sidetracked here. Apparently, like in Iceland, you can see anyone's tax return with the stipulation that you have to like go down to the whatever their tax facility. You have to go down there and then you have to like sign it out so that there has to be a record of like whoever did look at like so
oh
you can
yeah,
look up anybody in Iceland how much money they make, but then that person will know if
and
they have
and
rough
you have to go to
exact.
Iceland to do it too.
Well, they probably won't let us do it. Like you probably have
Oh,
to be an Icelander. You can't just be like da, 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 da. I would like to see this
uh,
person's taxes.
let me see Bjork's taxes, huh? Oh,
I demand your
I love
taxes.
Bjork. I love Bjork. I think she's great. So, all right. You got anything else? Any other news?
Nope.
All right, sounds good. Why don't we take a break and we'll be right back with the games we've been playing. All right, I am pretty much set. I'm ready to go.
Sure.
All right. All right, we're back, and Frank, why don't you go first?
Sure. Well, so I start off. I finished Hypnospace Outlaw. It does have credits that roll, so
Nice.
like that's how you really know you're done. Because I could see people being like, "Wait, I have I finished the game? Have I finished the story?" Because it kind of stops and starts the way it's structured. Like you have kind of like open world segments, and then more like you get on a mission, and then it gets more story focused. But there's a big twist, and you kind of expect there to be a twist. Like the fact that there's a twist is not a spoiler. But I was really thrown off by what the twist was. That was not what I expected. So here's spoiler space. Skip ahead a couple minutes. But yeah, so basically there is like a 20-year time jump. The game takes place in 1999, and at the Y2K, there's like the mission you're on is like stopping a virus that's supposed to cause year 2000 damage, not the actual Y2K bug.
Damn, is there like a countdown or anything like that? Please.
Uh, sort of like, but it's since the game isn't really in real time, it's not actually counting down in
Oh
real time.
man, that would be so intensive. Like all of a sudden, there's like a 2 minute countdown on the right corner. You have to save the world from Y2K, and you gotta do it by going through
um, but but
GeoCities.
uh, but yeah, but the virus is actually just intended to be annoying rather than harmful. But something goes wrong, and 6 people die because in the hypnospace you're surfing the internet while sleeping. You have like a headband on that allows you to log on in your sleep. So like several people die because they're hooked up to the system when this thing happens. And then the game jumps forward to real time. It's actually funny. The clock at the top, like the system clock, will just show the actual time now. They're like, okay, 20 years later, because it's been 20 years from 1999, and you are now working as a part of an archiving project. So you go from being like the moderator of this system to being an archivist. So that was not the twist. I was expecting it to be like Rage Against the Machine, like let's break the system down from the inside.
Mhm.
And then it kind of turns into an archivalist thing with a murder with the murder mystery of you kind of solving the mystery of what happened 20 years ago. So yeah, and then it gets super maudlin at the end. I won't spoil it any further because then we'll just yak on about the plot. But yeah, for a game that made me laugh so much, like the end is very um, like
Macabre? Would you say dark?
no, it's like Hallmark Channel tragedy. So yeah, sad.
Oh, okay.
Um, but yeah, no, it was well. And then also there is the hypnospace outlaw part of it comes in near the end where you're actually playing this relatively simple car based game where there's like it's like Tron. It's the Tron superhighway, and there's all these little cyber cars, and you're the cyber car cops, and you have to chase after specific cars and then like deplete their energy with a beam. And that mainly functions as the way you make currency in the archivist section of the game because you're no longer getting paid for banning people and whatnot. But yeah, no, I highly recommend Hypnospace Outlaw. I would definitely give this like an 8.5 or maybe even a 9. It was just a for what it is, it does a super duper good job. It's very well written. It's just fun to mess around in all the pages. There's so much content. I know there's at least 2 like missions that I did not complete, and there's probably several that I never even found. Because it's structured so much as like you basically like need to kind of progress so far to unlock the next story beat. So there's usually like more things available to you than you need. Uh, so yeah, I don't know from a completionist standpoint. There is kind of like you could like be more of a completionist in the archivist thing, which also has the fun little twist of you can move between timelines because there's in the earlier part of the game there's time jumps as well, but only of like days or weeks. But so in the end, you can actually go from all those different times. So you can see how a page changed as that fall and winter 1999 went on. Really, really good game. Cool, fun music. I was listening to the soundtrack. It's goofy as all hell. And just really great kind of puzzle design of having like I felt very smart solving it. Like there's a lot of like kind of outside the box thinking of like, okay, what kind of thing do I need here, and like how do I proceed? But I never really got stuck for very long. And like one of the things that I got stuck on, like I ended up not even like I did other things and then just managed to progress in the story. Like I kind of know what I needed to do, but I wasn't. It was cracking a password, and I didn't have something quite right. Um, yeah, like and there's lots of kind of puzzles that you can solve kind of at any time that come together in the end in a very very seamless way. I was very impressed. So thumbs up.
All right,
um
cool. So yeah, it sounds like a pretty fun game. You were playing this on PS4 again, or
no, this
on
is
PC?
on. I'm just playing it on my iMac
Oh, okay.
because since it's a a user interface, it's a simulated desktop. It would be a pain in the butt. You'd have to like control the cursor with a controller. I don't believe it has controller support on PC or anything anyway. So, but it's also not a very demanding. It does have one technical issue, at least on Mac, where the non like I think any of the MIDI music, so it did not apply to recorded music, but I think some of the tracks are MIDI, and they were having a lot of tempo problems, and like I found out on the Steam forums that it's a memory leak. Like so, it basically like if you play the game for an hour, like you start to notice these the audio starting to have like tempo and pitch issues, and I thought it was intentional. I played the whole game thinking that it was intentional because it didn't come up that
Hmm.
much. Only when you played the game, for a certain amount of time in a sitting to like have the memory leak become a problem. But but yeah, otherwise it was very cool.
All right, sounds good. Is that it?
Well, I got a lot of stuff. I don't know if you want to trade off or
All right. Let me. Yeah, I'll talk about Labo VR, but I'll tell you what. My Bluetooth mouse just died. So let me just grab my USB really quick. All right, I'll be right back.
All right. Well, I will keep talking then.
Okay, if you want to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Chris can't hear me. Everybody, Chris is out of the room. Let's talk about him behind his back. He doesn't have a lot of hair, which is really hypocritical of me to say because I have way less. Anyway, no, I actually had a big video game delivery day the other day. I got 3 games in the mail. Uh, and that was all kind of a coincidence. It was just things that had been ordered. So one of them was a collector's edition of Windjammers, which I'm going to. I'm trying not to play it myself because it's for a video game tournament, so I don't want to have an advantage over the other players. But yeah, so I got the limited run games collector's edition of Windjammers because some guy on eBay was selling it for below cost, sealed, mint condition, free shipping. It came very fast. I'm like, I don't know what, and the guy is like a perfect rating on eBay with thousands of transactions, and I'm like, how are you doing this? How are you possibly making any money?
Mhm.
So either the stuff is stolen, or he is like doing a long con where he gets a really good eBay rating and then does one big scam or something. I don't know. Worked out great for me though. I got the collector's edition for pretty cheap. So it comes with a frisbee. For those of you who don't know, Windjammers was a Neo Geo like combination of Pong and frisbee, where you have to throw the frisbee into the other guy's goal and bounce it off the sides and stuff. It's pretty fun. I played the beta when they were the re-release, um, when they were testing out the net code when they released it, but I never actually got around to getting it until now. So once the tournament is over, I can actually play it for real a little bit. But it's a lot of fun having I'm getting much further in my goal of having uh, the smallest game that they bothered to put on a Blu-ray for a physical copy.
Mhm.
And this one really takes the cake so far. It's like 46 megabytes.
Wow.
It's because it's a Neo Geo game. So it's 46 megabytes on the blue, which means that like whatever, just like copy protection or, whatever like system software has to be on a PS4 and Blu-ray is almost certainly taking up more space than the game itself at that point.
Yeah, they should just
It just
throw in a
amuses
movie
me. Yeah.
on there.
uh, Yeah, something, right? I feel like you guys are wasting a lot of space. But yeah, collector's edition comes with like the soundtrack and a frisbee and a goofy box, and it's barely like it's a bit of a price jump to go to the physical version at all, but it was barely any more money to get the collector's edition. So I was like, what the hell? But in addition to that, I also got Uniracers on Super
Oh
Nintendo.
yeah, I saw you tweeting about that. I had this game back in the day
Yeah, Um,
for the Super
well, I
Nintendo.
was tweeting about it because it took me. I was like home on my lunch today, trying to get it to work because I cleaned the connectors. Like it came in the mail, was cheap, and acceptable condition. So I'm like, who knows if they tested it or cleaned it. And especially if you're using like an analog, Super NT, they're sensitive. So you really like want to clean your cartridges before ever putting them in that fancy expensive thing. Screw the actual Super Nintendo; it can handle it. But so I cleaned it. And I couldn't get it to work. I was very frustrated. I'm like, these games they're so hard to break. But I've gotten a few duds in my day before. At least in mom and pop shops, you can just bring it back. But anyway, uh, it wasn't working, and I'm like going back and forth between the analog and an actual Super Nintendo, trying to, and I finally got it to boot up, but then it would crash. It could go to the title screen, but then if you like picked one player, it would crash, and I'm like, oh, is this corrupt or something? But the the idle mode would play, like it would play the demo mode if you let it sit there. So it could load up the game because it's not obviously when it does a Super Nintendo game does a demo mode, it's not playing a video. It's actually playing a recording of the game itself. Uh, so I'm like, okay, what the heck's wrong? So I did some googling and it turns out there is a secret menu you can get to, and I wonder how many games have these to reset the memory. Because with these battery, like I thought maybe the battery had died, and I'm like waiting for that to happen. Like these things are all, 25 plus years old. I'm waiting for the batteries to start dying on all my games, so I have to get the fancy screwdriver to open them up and replace them. Um, but it was possibly caused by the battery. But yeah, the memory was corrupt, so I had to reset the PRAM or whatever, and that was what that weird screenshot I had on Twitter was. And then I thought you had to sit there and wait for it. Like it just says resetting, and I sat and like luckily the music's really good in Uniracers, so I just had that going on while I was like cleaning the house. And then finally I realized that it wasn't actually doing anything. I just needed to press a button to get out of that screen. Like it had already done it like instantly, and I was just sitting on that screen for no reason. Um, but yeah, so that's something I've never had to do with a Super Nintendo game before. Is
Yeah, that's
find
weird. I'm
a
surprised.
secret menu.
I've never even heard of that before. So you got.
But apparently it's an issue, and it fixed it. So, but it barely had a chance to touch the game. But man, it's very smooth. The animations are very, because they're just unicycles. They're very simple little things, but the animations of them doing the little loops and stuff is satisfying, and it controls pretty well. So
Yeah, 60 frames per second.
I don't
Isn't
think
it?
so.
No. Okay. Maybe I got
Maybe
rose-tinted
maybe
glasses.
partially like a lot of those games like maybe like the game itself might run at 60 hertz, but there's probably only 30 frames of animation, if that, for the actual things. But we'll see. I'll give you guys a more detailed report as I play the game more.
Well, if I recall, very kind of interesting racing game, and it kind of wants you always to be doing these tricks because I think if you do these tricks, you go faster.
Yeah, if you either get a speed boost or I know it like points. I think obviously
Yeah.
like because that was the thing that I had to reset. Like this game has a very detailed scoring system. So sorry, whoever had this game before me. I don't get to see your high scores because the memory went bad.
By the way, did you get the instruction booklet with it?
No,
I
I think I've purchased one Super Nintendo game like in my adult life that actually like had a box or a manual. Like 99.9% of the time, it's just a cart.
Yeah, this was the mid '90s when instruction manuals were getting edgy. You know, when they were like doing jokes. The at least when I was 12 years old, I remember the instruction manual for this game was pretty funny, and just like the Earthworm Jim instructional manual. So if you get a chance, you should look it up. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I should probably look it up just so I can know what the controls are because I might be missing something.
yeah,
I managed to do like a flip and a backflip, but I'm sure there's more to it.
yeah, I remember it has a pretty high learning curve, but then once you kind of get going, like yeah, it's pretty fun, or not pretty fun, but yeah, you can do some crazy stuff.
And I'm excited to try out the 2-player mode as well.
Yeah, I didn't have anyone that would play 2 players, so if you can get someone that actually is pretty good at, I don't know how fun it would be. I would imagine so.
But yeah, and then the last game that came in the mail in my big mail day the other day was Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which I just actually like got through the first boss of right before we recorded this. No, turns out I had a lot of other stuff to talk about anyway. But yeah, that seems pretty fun. Except for it's hard to go to this from Sekiro because the controls are so wildly different. Like the block button from Sekiro is the sprint button here, and like X is your dodge, but it's also a sprint in combat, and circle is a kick, and I don't know if triangle does anything. But like square is attack, and so the button that would normally be attack, R1 in Sekiro is block. So I'm always blocking when I mean to be attacking, and it's got a parry system that I'm really good at least because I'm so used to doing that. But then I fought the boss, and there was very little he had that you could parry. And it was like, oh right, I'm supposed to dodge things again. Going back to this game. Which made me a little nervous, like getting killed the first couple of times for having a hard time figuring out the controls, because this game has a big ass warning, like in text, which is weird for this game. Like, there's very little text. There's no button prompts for anything. Like it's taken me a while to like figure things out. You have to listen to the character. Main character's crazy and has voices in her head, and oftentimes the voices will be like giving you gameplay hints, which is so it's like you guys are annoying, but that's convenient.
Mm.
So, but yeah, there's like this one like thing that it lets you know in text on the screen as well as in the voiceover, so you know that's super important. And it basically tells you that there's a permadeath, and that you've got like a rot going up your arm that spreads every time you game over, and if it reaches your head, it erases your progress. And I was like, whoa! But then I remembered, oh yeah, this game came out a while ago, and I seem to recall reviewers like calling the game's bluff. Like somebody actually just went and like tried to see how many times you needed to die for it to actually erase your save or whatever it does, and it's like dozens and dozens and dozens.
Yeah, I
So
think I recall that too.
yeah, so this seems like an empty threat. This is a thing video games. It's actually kind of a connection with Sekiro and the Dragon Rot system, which also is kind of an empty threat because it doesn't actually do that much, and it's not that difficult to get rid of. But yeah, so it kind of changes the way you think. It makes you more cautious. It's a psychological game they're playing with you. And I have died a few times, and it's still I haven't noticed it getting much farther up her arm. But yeah, Hellblade is basically a walking simulator, really. It's very atmospheric, um, very kind of directed and linear, and like combat is like you're in combat mode now, and the camera functions differently, and you've got the sword drawn out, and you can't just swing your sword like outside of combat. It's very like now you're in a combat scenario, now you're not. That's I guess that's kind of the one flaw I'm seeing with it right now is like you can see the seams pretty easily between all this stuff. But if you just let yourself go with it, it's just a story driven kind of cinematic experience, and I think it's going to be over pretty quick. Since I got through the first boss in like 45 minutes, so he did kill me a few times because I was trying to block all this crap, and then I'm like, right, not playing Sekiro. Stop trying to block the flaming sword. And then also it's got like a bullet time mode, and it took me forever to figure it out because I was like, okay, she's got a little charm on her belt that kept like having glowing symbols appearing on it, like as I was fighting this boss. And I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, clearly that's something I can do, but I have no idea what button to do or like what context. And finally, the boss started doing some kind of unblockable fire attack, and the voices in my head were all like, "You need to focus on it," and focusing in the game is if you hold down the right trigger, it zooms the camera in, and that's used for the light puzzle solving elements to like focus in on an object that you want to look at. So it turns out that using the focus button in combat, as long as you have one of those symbols on your charm, makes a bullet time mode that like disrupts enemy like super attacks. So it's like, oh, if I hadn't already died 3 times, that if I would have felt like that was really smoothly woven in there, guys. But it's not. But I don't know. I might not be doing these things in the right order because you get to choose like which kind of area you want to go to first. And I don't think I actually picked the first one. Not that it matters that much because this does not seem to be a super difficult game, and I don't think there's going to be a ton of replay value, and because there's not really like collectibles or much other interactions other than these really specific puzzles that are all about finding glyphs, and then there's basically the equivalent of audio logs that you can find, but they don't ever seem to be super tucked away. So
Yeah.
I don't know, but it looks good.
Yeah, well, it just gives you an excuse to look at that character model for the whole game, just to
Yeah,
do
well,
stuff.
there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, kind of disguise like these areas. Um, the story does a good job of propelling you forward. Like you just keep going to the next thing because the game establishes pretty quickly that like there's not a lot of reason to backtrack or like root around for secrets. Just kind of like keep hitting the next story beat, um, getting to the next area, and you'll see pretty quick what it is. Um, I mean, you usually like, okay, here's the door that's locked. I gotta go find the glyph in the surrounding area. But so far, it's been a pretty smooth process. It's entertaining. It's a you know, this was like a $30 game at launch, I think, and so yeah. I was just talking about how I want more focused, smaller, more linear things, and so here it is. As long as I can just get used to the controls and stop blocking when I mean to attack.
There you go. Just what the doctor ordered. All right. All right. Okay, let me just get a drink quick.
Labo,
All right.
Labo,
Yeah,
Labo,
Labo VR.
Labo.
All right. So yeah, so finally the update for Mario and Zelda VR came out today, about almost 2 hours ago now, as we record this. And let's just start with Mario first because that's kind of a little bit easier to kind of explain. So Mario, so they said it only has like 3 kind of experiences, and so it's not like the whole game. Basically, I only played one, but basically it seems like it sets you kind of in a corner, not in a corner, but kind of in maybe the middle of a kind of a level. And then from what the mission that I had to do was basically just find instruments on the level that are hidden throughout the level, and then bring them to musicians located throughout the level. So it's basically a fetch quest. And the VR trick is that the camera is situated in one spot and you can't move. However, you end up moving the camera like around the levels. So like you start out looking one way, like maybe due north or whatever, but then to complete the mission, to complete the level, you basically have to turn all the way around because there's stuff behind you that you have to do. So basically, you're in this chair and you're kind of spinning around and just like basically like finding stuff. And I mean, it was I mean, whatever. It's kind of neat. That is more of a tech demo than like an actual like game because again, you're just doing fetch quest stuff, which isn't like really super interesting. And I mean, it looks like a 3DS. I mean, it's basically the same 3D effect. There's just like maybe 3 maybe panes, I guess, or layers, I guess, and they choose Mario as one. The background's the other one, and then there's like a foreground. And it looks like you're kind of just like looking in there, and it's not like VR in that fact that you're like looking all the way around and all that stuff, but it definitely looks good.
It's diorama VR.
Yeah, basically. And so I actually got a little bit more seasick from that than the Zelda one. It's almost because Mario moves like too fast. I don't know. He's doing a lot of different animations. He's moving like at 60 frames per second for sure. For sure. I'm not sure about the regular other stuff in the level. That may be moving at 30 frames. So maybe that's where the disconnect is. So again, it's more like a tech demo than anything actually. So all right, and then Zelda on the other hand. So people were saying like, okay, is it going to work with the frame rate and all that stuff? But it works actually really, really well. And because it's not like VR, as in like you're in this world, it's basically just looking at this screen. And again, there's like different planes of dimension. Basically, and like Link is one, and then you got the background, and then like when you're running around and stuff, you actually see like the grass like by your feet, kind of like run like at you, like through the screen and all that stuff. So that's actually like really really cool. And there's like a lot of grass and a lot of like objects like that. You end up like running through, and it totally actually like changes the way that I was playing the game. Like instead of like during the regular game, I would just be like up above. The camera would be like up above Link and all that stuff. But then I found myself like playing the game like at Link's like shoulder height level. Almost like I was like really looking through the whole thing myself. And you're basically your head, the contraption, all that stuff basically is the camera, but you're not like flipping like around like super quick and all that stuff because you have this thing on your head and it just makes sense that you're making just slight adjustments. So they balance the camera out really, really well. And when you're doing stuff like shooting arrows and all that stuff, you're basically using your head to target, and that actually works really, really well. So the way and so I think this is actually a triumph. This actually works a lot better than I thought, and it really does kind of give you a new way to like kind of play and look at this game. And I found myself like just looking at stuff more immediately, like closer to myself, and maybe it's because stuff like further away is more blurry and all this stuff, and you do see the pixels and you do see the lines and all this stuff. But you're playing like Zelda, in 3D, so it's not VR, it's more like 3D. That's really what it is. When you're actually, I didn't find much combat, but when actually I did get into combat, actually pretty cool because, you're like beating up monsters and like stuff's like being like thrown around. So you get these cool like 3D effects of like, the stuff like moving around you with like the smoke or like the bits and pieces that are being like left over and all that stuff. So it's actually like, it's pretty cool. Again, the resolution is not great. They really have to lower the resolution to get this thing running, especially with two pictures going at the same time. I wonder what the resolution actually is. Like, it definitely it looks like a 3DS, basically like right up to your face for the most part. And
That's essentially what it is. So.
yeah, for the most part. And then it's kind of weird because the two separate images are square. They're not round like in the Labo VR section games part the part of the games. So it's actually kind of difficult to see stuff in your periphery, like your health, like your hearts on the top left. You can't see them for the most part. You can only see the ones like kind of on the far right if you have like 20 hearts or whatever. So if you're gonna start the game over and you only have 3 hearts, you can't even tell like what you have for the most part. So that's kind of a little user interface issue, but it's probably an issue they're not going to spend a whole lot of money just to solve. I mean, you'd probably have to move them, like in the center of the screen or something like that. So, but I would actually play like a lot, and actually I was probably going to play a lot, except I had to do this goddamn podcast, so I had to pause myself. But I'm going to play it quite a bit. I'm going to see like how much I want to do like a what do you call it, a dungeon with it, see how that changes stuff. But it's definitely got me playing Zelda. I mean, again, it's almost like getting Zelda 64 like in 3D, and like you're playing the same game again.
This is the whole plan all along. The secret Zelda DLC. That would get hooked again.
Yeah, damn. Actually, well, I have not gotten the DLC yet, so maybe I should just buy that and then I can do a dungeon. I should do that. So yeah, I mean, I did get seasick at times when you do a Z target really quick. It's only when those cameras like move really, really quick, like when they snap into position. I found myself getting seasick. And then I'm not quite sure about this, but they may kind of limit Z targeting also because I was around some wolves that were attacking me, and then I couldn't Z target them. So I don't know if again they took that out because it just snaps the camera too quick and makes you too sick. And they're like, well, now that you can see in 3D, you don't need Z targeting. But on the other hand, I got to this other enemy again. I could not Z target when he was flying in the air, but when he got to the ground, I could Z target him. So maybe that was another situation. So I'm not really quite sure. I didn't get in too much combat. I'll figure that out. But yeah, they may have like limited Z targeting, which is kind of interesting that they thought about that stuff. So. Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a Switch and you haven't gotten Labo VR, I mean, I think it's kind of a must buy to just try it out. And I think they're gonna have a lot more games that take advantage of this. And I think it's gonna be it's pretty cool. It's definitely VR with kind of Nintendo's twist to it. It's not the most expensive, it's not the most fancy type of thing, but it works and it works pretty well. And they got nice IP to play with it. So color me, I'm pretty impressed. I think it's pretty cool for sure. So, all right.
Got what you expected out of it?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a gimmick, but it works. It definitely works for sure. So
it's an effective gimmick.
Because they're not trying to make they're not trying to make like Oculus Rift type stuff. They're trying to do what works for the stuff and what works good for it, and just kind of be having a window into stuff. Looking at stuff works in 3D. So they've done this for a while with their 3DS system and all that stuff. So, all right, I'm running out of words here. So, Thanks
Rock and
for
roll.
thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. As always, we're gonna end it right there. Let me get the music going. It's been quite a week again, Frank, but we're here for you to
Keep
make
going.
sense of the world. So, for Frank White, my name is Chris Stotts. It's been the Chris Frank Games. See you guys next week.
Bye bye, everybody.